evening, visitors, and welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Sharon Baum, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Air Commodore Matt Hegarty. We warmly welcome the family of Flight Lieutenant Paul Pardoel, whose story will be told shortly. We also warmly welcome the delegation representing the Australian Defence Force Academy Class of 1990 Reunion Group, whose members were classmates of Flight Lieutenant Paul Pardoel. Brigadier Marcus Simpson, United Kingdom Defence and Military Advisor, accompanied by Mrs. Lucy Simpson, and Wing Commander Martin Rendell, United Kingdom Air Advisor, and Mr. Richard Morton, United Kingdom Defence Finance Administrator. We also welcome Group Captain Ernie Walsh, Acting President of the Air Force Association, ACT. We welcome all Australian Defence Force personnel who have gathered here today to commemorate the service of Flight Lieutenant Paul Pardoel, and the Friends of the Memorial delegation in attendance this evening. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that continue to serve, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by family and by visitors to the memorial. If you are able, would you please stand and join in singing the national anthem? Those requiring a seat, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we will read the story behind just one of those on the commemorative roll, which lists the names of men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Flight Lieutenant Paul Martin Pardoel. Paul Pardoel was born on the 15th of June 1969 in Colac, Victoria, the only son of John and Margaret Pardoel. His father had emigrated from Rotterdam in the Netherlands as a young man and met his future wife in Melbourne. Paul's father's work selling European cars took the family to Malaysia during Paul's early years. Here he attended a Chinese preschool and learnt to read and speak Mandarin. After returning to Victoria, the family settled in the town of Clunes, where they bought and ran the local pub. As a teenager, Paul helped behind the bar and attended St Patrick's Catholic College in nearby Ballarat. His favourite subjects were history and English, and he avidly read classic literature. He took to rowing and rugby and enjoyed motorbike riding, playing guitar and participating in school musicals. In 1988, Paul enlisted in the Royal Australian Air Force and enrolled at the Australian Defence Force Academy in Canberra. He completed a Bachelor of Science degree in 1990. Next came a pilot's course, which he did not pass. Later, he completed the navigator's course, which suited him much better. Qualifying as a navigator, Paul was posted to number 36 and number 37 squadrons, part of the airlift group based at RAF Richmond outside Sydney. Flying in the C-130 Hercules aircraft, Paul served on operations around the world for several years. In 1999, he moved to Sale in Victoria, where he became an instructor at the School of Air Navigation, where he was known as an exceptional instructor. Paul met and fell in love with a young woman at the RAF Summer Ball. He and Kelly were married in November 1995 and soon began a family. A son, Jackson, and two daughters, Jordan and India, were born over the next few years. Despite his busy Air Force job, he was very much an active father. After 14 years in the Royal Australian Air Force, Paul was looking for a new challenge. This he found through transferring to the RAF, joining number 47 Squadron in 2002. Based at RAF Lynham in Wiltshire, the squadron flew the familiar C-130 Hercules. Moving the family to England was a big step, but they adapted and settled in well. Known to his friends and colleagues as unflappable, Paul was never fazed. He enjoyed the banter of being the only Australian in the squadron and was a good sport, especially whilst having to endure Australia's loss of the 2003 Rugby World Cup final to England. Over the next 3 years, Paul flew with number 47 Squadron in Afghanistan and Iraq. Their Special Forces flight was tasked with airlift and resupply operations for UK Special Forces. It was a busy job and often dangerous. By 2003, they were operating in Iraq. The 30th of January 2005 was election day in Iraq. Flight XV-179, comprising Paul's lone Hercules aircraft, had work to do. Taking off just after noon from Balad Air Base, some 75 kilometres north of the capital, they landed at Baghdad International Airport an hour later. Keeping their engines running, their next mission was a return flight to Balad, transporting an RAF officer from Headquarters Strike Command. They took off again just 12 minutes later at 4:24 p.m. Following their standard tactics of flying low and fast above the main road, they headed north. 6 minutes after takeoff, the C-130K was hit by ground fire. The fuel tank explosion ripped the wing off and the plane crashed into the ground. The crash site, some 30 kilometres north of Baghdad, was found 45 minutes later and coalition forces arrived on the ground soon afterwards. The aircraft was destroyed and burnt out, none aboard having survived the crash. All 9 RAF men and a British Army signaller had perished. The crew's remains were recovered and repatriated. Paul Pardoel's funeral service was held here in Canberra at St Christopher's Cathedral, Manuka, and he was buried in Woden Cemetery. His service is commemorated by the ACT Memorial, and his name is also listed on the commemorative roll here at the Australian War Memorial. Paul is one of 6 Australians who died during or as a result of their service in the Iraq War. He was 35 years old. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Flight Lieutenant Paul Martin Pardoel, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They grow not old, as we who are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial, and we wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.